Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my Copic Markers tips and tricks video. Just a quick thing, I mentioned that I'm a self-taught artist in the title because I'm aware that everything that I'm going to be teaching you today is stuff that I've just learnt myself. No one's taught me anything, so I could be entirely wrong about the way I go about things, but this is what I've discovered works for me. So hopefully you pick up something useful that you can use in your own art. Okay, so let's get started. This is what I've sketched the original sketch out with. These are Pilot Color Eno 0.7 mechanical pencils. These come in multiple colors. I've used the purple and the dark blue for this one. I prefer to use this over a graphite pencil or a lead pencil because I find if I use a lead pencil, if I go over it with the Copic markers, it tends to spread the lead, so then everything becomes muddy and grey. Whereas if I use these, there's no problem. For the outlines, I'm going to be using my Copic Multiliner SP pens. They are in the 0.3 size and also one of the brush pens. I'm using the colours Sepia, Sky Blue, Orange and Cobalt, and my trusty Copic Multiliners in the warm grey. I was really excited to get to use the SP Multiliners because I'd literally that day gone out and bought the turquoise and accidentally come home with pretty much all of the colours, totally on accident. This is the first art video I'm recording with my new camera. I realised that it doesn't have a digital zoom with the lens that I used, so I'm going to have to use my other lens when I do these, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to get too close during this video, but hopefully you can see everything you need to know, and just me telling you what's going on will hopefully be useful. So I knew what colours I was making the fox overall and what colour my artwork was going to be, or the colour palette, so that's why I chose these particular colours for the outlines. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just using each colour based on what the outline is for. So the skull's going to be white obviously, so I'm using the grey for that, and the horns are going to be kind of a brown colour, so I'm using the sepia, etc, etc. Also, one thing you might not notice with this one because we're not close enough, but if you watch other artworks where I've outlined things, I like to put emphasis on certain parts by making the lines thicker there, and then retract emphasis by making them very thin in other places. I just think it looks neat and clean, and it makes it easier to understand the line work when you're looking at the artwork. So we're moving on to the Copic sketch markers now. I have a little cheat sheet that I thought I'd show you so I know exactly what the colours are going to look like when I use them. They're on an Express It blending card, which is what I use 99% of the time for Copic work. So I've picked out two oranges here. One is more of a pink orange and one is more of a yellow orange. I'm using the two of them for the base colours. If I used one, I feel like it would make the fox look a bit flat, so that's why I'm using the two different colours. Same with the pinks, two different pinks there, and then I've picked out a deeper orange just to give the fox a little bit more depth before I actually go in with my shading colours. So in case you didn't know exactly what Copics were, I thought I'd give you a little bit of information about them while we're watching me colour in boringly. So they are an alcohol-based ink, and they're non-toxic and permanent. I believe there is 358 colours. They also come in different types, so you can get the original, which is now called the classic, you can get the sketch, which is what I use, you can get a wide one, you can get the chow one, and I know there's one called the comic, but I think you can only get that in Japan at the moment. I like the sketch one because it has a brush nib. I find it's much easier to blend the colours with that than with the classic, which is what I used to use when I was in high school. The classic has two, I guess they're calligraphy nibs, one's like a wedge one and one's just like a fine nib. And yeah, they don't really lend themselves as much to shading. So I'm using combinations of blues and greens for the feathers. I'm going dark to light because I feel like that makes it look like it sort of bounces out more, it gives it more volume, whereas if I was going light to dark, it'd kind of look like it was pulling itself in instead of like sort of puffing out. So now up to the shading on the fox. As with every artwork that I do, I tend to use a combination of cool colours for my shading, usually purples, blues and greens. With Copics, the colours that I'm using here and the colours that I use on every single thing that I do with Copics that involves shadows are RV95, which is called Baby Blossoms, V25, which is Pale Blackberry, BV20, which is Dull Lavender, and BG10, which is called Cool Shadow, that's a green colour. So the reason I like to use colours instead of a grey or the darker version of whatever I am currently shading is, I guess, A, I like rainbow colours, and B, I just feel like it adds some sort of depth and like a little bit of magic to the artwork. How I got into this whole thing was back when I was very young at school. We did a project one day, which was they gave us a sun and it had half face was angry and the other half of the face was happy, and we had to paint the angry face in cool colors and the happy face in warm colors. And somehow that's just stuck with me. It just sort of clicked that, shadows don't necessarily have to be grey. So now I'm sorting out what colors I'm using for the background. Again, I'd rather not use just greys for snow, so I've decided to go with purples and pinks mostly for this one, with a little bit of brown. You'll notice I didn't actually do any outlining for the background. This is because I want it to be blurry, as if you're using a camera, and there will be lots and lots of blending involved. So the easiest way to work, I guess with most things, but particularly in this sort of way, is to go light to dark. So do all of your light colors. You can always make them darker. If you do something that's too dark, it's difficult to fix. So I'm going in with all the light colors now. I'm leaving some white spaces to kind of seem like tree trunks, and I'm adding darker a little bit around those just to make them pop a little bit more. And in this case, because it's going to be blurry, it's actually better to keep it messy, because then nothing pops out specifically, it doesn't become too sharp. So just keep going over and over, lots of patience, many layers. So we're up to my favourite trick with Copics, which is to use the ink for the colourless blender to splatter across the page and make it look like watercolour splatters. I'm just placing some of it in a spare jar lid, and then I am using a normal paintbrush just to splatter it across the page. I'm sure there's a heap of other cool ways that you could use the colourless blender like this to create texture. I haven't really had a chance to play with it too much aside from the splattering, but I certainly plan on doing it in the future. This is my favourite texture to use when I do use paint, so I was really happy when I found a way to do it with Copics as well. Now I'm taking some white acrylic paint to splatter across the top to be like snowflakes. If you've seen a lot of my artwork, you probably realize that this is also a it's pretty much a staple of my artwork as well. I'm obsessed with splattering little flecks of white across my work. There is actually something that Copic make that could be used for this. It's called the Copic Opaque White Ink, and it comes in a bottle that kind of looks like nail polish, and it's got like a little fine brush that you can apply it with, or you could apply it with your own brush, I guess, and whatever other ways you think of. I've actually had a look for it in Australia, or at least in Melbourne, and not been able to find it at all. So my next option is to order it online. So after waiting for a couple of minutes for it to dry a little bit, I go in with a tissue and just dab up the remainder. This means that some of the drops are going to be complete drops and some of them are going to be missing the middle, so they're like a circle, and I think that looks a little bit prettier than just all of them being flat. And then after that, I go in with the acrylic again, and I'm just highlighting a few things where I feel like I may have gone a little bit too dark with the Copics, and then I'm adding essentially blurry snowflakes that are further back in the picture than the ones that are really sharp and crisp with the splattering. And yes, I'm using my finger to spread them out and blend them into the background. I actually use my fingers a lot in painting, essentially to blur things out and sort of smudge things around. I assume that there's some kind of equipment that you can do it with, but I've just always used my fingers and I don't see why I should stop now. So I'm adding the finishing touches now with a white gel pen. This is my favourite part of any artwork because it always seems to bring everything to life. So I'm just adding it to all of the areas that need just a little pop, making sure to add just a little dot in each eye because that always brings things to life. And I'm using it also just to make sure you can see that there is separation in depth from, let's say, the top of the tail to the legs there. Now I'm going back in with the warm grey multiliner and just making sure that all of the important outlines are visible. In doing this, I'm making sure that the fox is the most important thing in the picture. It's the thing that your eye is drawn to immediately and it pops right out of the background. So now I'm going in with a wine-coloured Copic Multiliner, and this is in a 0.1 size. I'm just using this one to warm up the lines a little bit more. Again, I'm usually very wary of using greys and blacks in pictures. And that's it. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I sincerely hope that you found something useful in here. If you have any other questions about anything, please let me know. I'm still learning what's useful to you guys and how to present these. But yeah, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more stuff like this, please subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see more of my artwork, there are links down below in the description. Until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye!